Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that the first guide I will be bringing you will be a guide on how to properly jungle. Now, the biggest reason I chose to do jungling as my first guide is because, frankly, the junglers in the first scrimmage game I saw really lacked direction and lacked really an idea of what their role as a jungler was. A common misconception about junglers is that really they just serve to support the lanes on their team, and that is just strictly false. Jungling is, in a very large part, another lane wherein two people are going to be fighting each other. Invading the jungle, ganking other lanes, is a part of the jungle lane, as it were, and you are very much competing with the enemy jungler for your own objectives. The objective in a standard lane is to keep your tower up, knock down the enemy tower, get a few kills, and farm well. The objective in the jungle is a much more objective-based mindset, wherein your objectives are, in this order of priority, your top priority is to secure Dragon. Dragon is the top priority as a jungler, but really you can't concern yourself with taking Dragon until you are level 6 and have a Wriggles Lantern. That is generally a good benchmark to try and take Dragon. Other objectives include ganking lanes, which varies based on priority. If you have somebody who's in a lot of trouble, then you need to visit their lane. But this is closely related to the third objective in jungling, and that is securing your neutral monster buffs. In ganking lanes and covering lanes for people, you offer the enemy jungler a large opportunity to secure your buffs as an objective, and that is a huge detriment to you as a jungler. I realize that junglers do have a big responsibility to help out those in their lane, but a lot of the responsibility of the jungler is to the jungler themselves as well. They need to make sure they're keeping up with farm to ensure that they don't fall off in the late game, and they need to be doing a lot more than just babysitting you, to be frank. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to lock the camera while we go here, and I'm going to briefly explain what it is I do with Udyr. Udyr is, without a doubt, my favorite jungler, and he's the jungler I've had the most experience with. I have done a very refined build with Udyr, and a lot of the stuff, really, you're not going to be able to pull off with Udyr by virtue of A, I have a lot of runes, B, I have a lot of experience, and C, Udyr can do a lot of what other junglers can't do because he is simply the fastest jungler in the game. Between my rune setup, Tiger Stance, the items I buy, Mastery setup, etc., you can look at the bottom left corner here. I have 84 attack damage at level 1. That's absolutely absurd. If you look at this, Lee Sin with the Doran's Blade has 94. Fuck, he's got some runes too. Okay, point being, 84 AD is still a shitload of AD. It's not as much as 94, but, you know, whatever. So let's look at the enemy team, just to get a feel for what it is I'm going to be going up against here. As Udyr, you're going to have a real difficulty catching people, really. I mean, some people are worse than others, but this team is actually not that bad. Nasus has his Wither, but using his Wither, he opens himself up to damage from his lane mate during your gank, so it's really not that bad. Malzahar doesn't really have any way to get away from me. He can stop me with his ult, but that's about it. Irelia is the enemy jungler, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Talon is a bitch for everybody to try and catch, and Tarek's stun could be trouble, but I will get Merc Tread, so it should be okay. So as we see here, I get a quick leash from Anivia, and we eat Blue alive. I could kill it here for a good 3 seconds, but I wait for Lee Sin to leave before I smite, just to make sure that I get all the experience from it. So, this is what I was talking about, is you really need to assess what jungler you're facing. You'll have to excuse me, I had quite a bit of lag at various periods in this game, so I am going to be doing a bit of dancing from time to time, but I mean, you'll still get the point of it all, you know, going through walls and shit. You really need to assess your enemy jungler, and you need to figure out what that means in relation to the way you're going to jungle. As Udyr, I'm a very fast, very aggressive jungler. Irelia is a much slower, much more controlled jungling character, and as a result, she is much slower than I am. By virtue of this, I can do my blue, run up here, and eat these golems alive and then leave. Now, what I do is okay, I'm going to pause this really quickly before we go in here. Note how I'm going to go and do a really quick, early level 2 gank on this Nasus. This is because of the position he was in. The creep wave is right in the middle, Lee Sin and Nasus had already been harassing each other, so he's at fairly low health. Because Lee Sin and I both have such high early attack damage, we have a really good shot of taking him down. I don't have Bear Stance, I don't have Red Buff, I have no way of CCing him. But if we look at the summer spells here, Nasus even has Flash. So what this attack does is it does multiple things. It puts a lot of pressure on Nasus. It causes him to burn his Flash at, like, that clock isn't accurate because it's been continuing to tick. But it causes him to potentially burn his Flash, burn his Ignite, burn more mana, because Nasus is a very mana-dependent champion in the lane. And it just applies a lot of pressure on him. It doesn't need to be a kill. But in popping in here, you can apply tons of pressure just by showing your face in a lane this early. And don't get me wrong, I still have a really good chance to get a kill here. My Tiger Stance early game does boatloads of damage, as you're about to see, and I myself have a Flash, so there is still a good chance we can kill him. So as we see, we come in here, he tries to fight Lee Sin because Lee Sin's at lower health, throws up his Ignite, but then I show up and Lee Sin secures the kill with his Q. So, the reason I decided to pop into that lane is, the reason I even noticed that in the first place is, as a jungler, what you should do is you should determine what it is you want to take. Obviously, all minor creep camps can be seen as an objective, but by taking those golems, I was accomplishing a larger objective. And my larger objective in taking those small golems was, I want to delay Irelia's jungle. She's a slow jungler to begin with, and I want to make that jungle experience even slower for her so I can get an advantage in being able to gank, and etc. As you can see, Irelia shows her face up top. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but that gank on Nasus had the secondary effect of top now needs more gank pressure, because Lee Sin is going to be able to go back now, and he has items. Like, he's got a whole new boots, pots, and a longsword on top of the starter item, and Nasus didn't get anything. He might have gotten a few more pots. That's a huge advantage for Lee Sin, who's already a really strong character. But back to what I was saying earlier, what you need to do, after you take an objective, regardless of how small it is, you need to stop and assess, what is it I want to do next? Once you take an objective, you need to take a look at the minimap, see what options are available to you, and act accordingly. So after taking these camps, I look around to see if there's anything I can take on the amount of health I have left, and there isn't. If there was wolves or wraiths, then I could easily do that, but I've already cleared everything out, so I have to go back. So I go back and buy, and I stop, and I go, okay, what objectives are available to me? Top lane is fairly pushed, but Lee Sin does have the advantage in the top lane. Bottom lane is about medium pushed, but the lane people are far back, so there's not a good chance I can gank them, but my red buff is clearly open. So I'm going to go and take the red buff really quickly, and then wait to see if any other venues open up for me to do ganks, or if any other objectives are available for me to take. So, I'm going to run up here and do the red really quickly. If I remember, there's quite a bit of lag here, so I could have done this red faster by virtue of having a better monkey's agility stacks, but it still goes down eventually. Again, I'm sorry for the lag. This is another clear example of why that level 2 gank helps so much. I don't want you guys to think that every game you should do a level 2 gank. A level 2 gank is a really big risk, and had it, the only reason I did it is because it was in such perfect flow with the path in which I take. And I generally take this path on Udyr to go and steal the enemy mini-golems. As you can see, I really had to come top again because of the early advantage Lee Sin got from that level 2 gank. And you really need to have big damage champions to do level 2 ganks. Lee Sin can do a level 2 gank. Udyr can do a level 2 gank in situations like that. You can't really get to people though. There are a bevy of champions. Shaco can do a level 2 gank. Shaco's level 2 ganks are frightening. A lot of level 2 ganking champions. Sin Sao's another one. We'll start at red, actually. So, I take my red and I look at the objectives and I go, okay, I can't take dragon yet by virtue of not having a Wriggles Lantern. 2 of my minor camps are up, but Malzahar's at low health middle. So I decide I'm going to wait in this brush and see if an opportunity comes up, because the creep waves are fairly even. If Malzahar walked back behind his tower into this little alcove, had his creeps been pushed back further, I could have flashed and tigered him for good damage. But he doesn't. So I decide, okay, what's the next objective I want to try? So I take a look and I say, okay, well, it's been about 6 minutes. If Irelia started at blue as I expect her to, blue is going to be up around now. So I swing around, and sure enough, this is where blue is. Because top was having such a tough time, Irelia has to stay up there and cover it. So I can really take this blue uncontested. by quick checking the minimap saying, okay, blue might be up and Irelia's top. I have really nothing to lose by taking this, especially since Malzahar went back. So after taking blue, I'm at pretty low health. I can scan around and look, okay, what objectives do I have? There are some minor camps that I'm not really interested in, but I do have enough gold to go get a Madred's Razors, so I'm going to go back. As you can see, all of my lanes are doing really well. We haven't suffered a single death yet, and we have 9 kills at the 7-minute mark. Our bottom lane's doing a great job, just straight up, and our top lane is doing amazing. I'm sure he'd be doing fine without me too. So since I took that blue, Udyr is blue dependent early on. He does need blue early on, but I mean, if you're having mana problems with Udyr past level, I would say 12, then there's an issue. Because I took the enemy blue, that opens this blue up for somebody else. Because Anivia has her lane pushed, it's easy for me to walk up here, take this blue really quickly, and then let Anivia grab it. Now, I know that everybody's going to say, why aren't you going top? There's 2 top, you're such a Jason jungler, you're just gonna leave him up there and just be like, oh, just a sec, I gotta get blue. The reason I'm doing this is because Lee Sin's at good health, he's got good items, and neither of those 2 lane mates are going to stay with him there that much. Like, the jungler's not going to stay there and push the lane, especially since she's had to hold it for so long already. She has to be frustrated. She needs to go off and start to do her own jungling. I pop up top to see if Nasus is around, because I do want to attack him, because he is low and he's an easy kill, and I decide, okay, he's not there. So I look around and I go, okay, since the enemy blue was up, the enemy red would be up around now, because in a standard jungle path, you're going to get red about 1 to 2 minutes after you get your blue. So I pop by, sure enough, Irelia's red is up too, and still, she's nowhere to be found. So I quickly take out red, don't even need to use smite with some Lucky Madred's procs, and so I grab that. After finishing that, I look around and say, okay, what objectives could I do now? I take a peek up top. This Nasus is on pretty low health, actually. So what I do is I wait here on the side for the perfect opportunity, flash up and bear him, get him with some quick tiger hits. Lee Sin gives me a hand, and with turtle stance and bear stance, I managed to get out. I don't want anybody watching this to ever try that maneuver, like that flash stun maneuver under a tower against a Nasus. Don't do that. Like, that's a bad idea. There are reasons why I did it, though. The reasons why I did it are because he wasn't level 6, his ultimate wasn't going to come out because of that. Lee Sin is already very fed, he has a lot of damage, and I have a lot of damage myself. Because Lee Sin and I are such high damage early game champions, that flash and that stun was more than enough to secure the kill there. So looking around now, all objectives really are accomplished except one, and that's Dragon. So I'm going to go and try and take Dragon. Normally, you want to have some bottom lane control over Dragon. You want to have Dragon warded so that when a jungler tries to come and solo it like I do, you can flat out stop it. Yeah, like the only other objective other than Dragon I could take here is gank lane, but all of my lanes are pushed. Because bottom lane on the enemy team has been dominated so much, because Irelia's had to stay top for so long, and because middle's being dominated by Anivia, I don't really expect them to have established good Dragon control, because they've been so focused on trying to recover in their own lanes, they can't really focus on stopping me taking Dragon, so it's easy to go up and solo. I saw Tarek run into the brush, so I'm going to run and do a little pressure. As you can see, he still doesn't have boots, and I have boots and bear stance, so I catch him pretty easily, get a few tiger hits off as I lag. Talon pops in, but see, the thing here is, it shouldn't have been a kill, but he gets greedy. By popping in and showing myself, he gets really, that was a stupid flash, but whatever. He gets really, dead set on stopping me, so as a result, I just back off, and then as he tries to chase me with Talon, he gets punished for being greedy. That really wasn't even great play by me, that was more bad play by him. Udyr is one of those champions that you will always pound your desk and scream, how the fuck did he get away with that little health? It's so frustrating. Between his bear stance and his turtle stance, he has a lot of low health staying power, especially if you see him with an item like, say, a Force of Nature. I remember getting a lot of escapes with Force of Nature, like from the enemy base back to my own. It's kind of funny, actually. But Udyr, again, as you saw in that video, even an unfed Udyr is a monster in a 1v1 situation. His Tiger Stance does tons of damage, and the lifesteal on his Turtle Stance is really good too, even after the nerf. Right, so again, I just accomplished an objective, I went back, I got some items, looking around, what's up? My red is up. It's that or gank a lane, so I'm going to take the red. Bottom lane's being punished, but I mean, really, there's only one person in bottom lane right now, and he's on low health. A gank by me isn't going to do that much, especially if I don't have red, since I don't have T2 boots. he still gets a kill because Tarek is really, really greedy. He must have been at really low health because he's immediately backing after that, but as it turns out, he was fine. I'm going to go and take Raise just because there's not much else I can do, but I noticed on my mini-map, Irelia's blues come up from the last time I took it, so I'm going to go stop by. I'm not really afraid of this, even though she's not on the map, because I straight up have taken so much from her and forced her to lose so much time gaining experience, and I've taken so many of her buffs, that she's got to be way far behind me at this point. So really, even if she comes to try and stop me at this blue, I could probably fight her and force her to back off. So I take the blue pretty easily because she never does show up. At this point, I don't even really know where she is. So I just decide, okay, you know what? All creep buffs are up. Minor camps aren't an issue at this point. I am level 8, so I'm not too worried about the experience from them. So what I decide to do is I want to just take more of Irelia's stuff. Really, she's not here. She's... I don't know where she could be, so... There's just, I might as well take the minor creeps. I hesitated for a moment because I looked at middle and bot and tried to see if there was a push I could participate in, but they're both still pretty close to the tower. Malzahar here tries to run, I noticed that, so I swing in from wolves and stun him, and he tries to ult Anivia, and I take him down with Tiger Stance. Anivia eggs up here by the tower, which really isn't that surprising. It was, Malz was screwed anyway. And then at this part here is where the enemy team starts to fall apart. Irelia is racist against Asian people, apparently, which is why she wasn't anywhere, because she got so demoralized from having to stay top. And a lot of that I will attribute to my sick level 2 gank. Again, looking around the map, what objectives are that I could do? I could run bot and help in that push, but Yorick's got us on his own. My blue has spawned, so I decide to weaken it and have Anivia come and take it, since I stole the enemy's blue already. My mana issues are still non-existent, so I might as well help her out with hers. I don't like the notion that giving blue to the AP carry is 100% of the time the way blue should go. In my opinion, unless you're playing like an energy jungler, the first 2 blues should go to the jungler. Because that's going to let me do my job in the laning phase. I have a job of my own that I need to do as a jungler. I need to keep myself up on experience, I need to be ganking to help everybody in the lane, and in losing blue, I lose a lot of my early game power to do so. So the first 2 blues really need to go to the jungler, and possibly even the third if they're not doing all that well. But after that, with junglers like Udyr, you don't really need to worry about it. So taking that red was another example of looking at the minimap and looking for an objective after completing one. After completing the objective of donating blue to my AP carry, I looked at the minimap and saw what was available for me to do, and I saw that the enemy red was up. So I should at least go and investigate it, if not steal it, put on a little pressure. Being a constant presence in the enemy's jungle is such a good thing to do as a jungler. But it is also a very hard thing to do. You need to have a good grasp of jungle timings, you need to have a good grasp of what junglers are fast, what junglers are slow, how fast is your jungler, and you need to be really good on your smite timetables, actually. These guys are going to die from a bit of greed. I was lagging really hard here, if you couldn't notice by the camera, so there wasn't all that much I could do. Start to take this down, attack the creeps here. And really, by this point, the game is over. I mean, there's not much else to say about it. I decided to go bot because I don't have quite enough gold. My goal here is I want to buy a Phage and tier 2 boots on my trip back. Or, that was the plan. I ended up buying something different. But so I poke bot and I decide, you know what, I'm going to do a little push on this tower since we have a creep wave coming up. This brings me to another point that's not really related to junglers, but it's related to the game in general. You want to make sure your trips back are always efficient cost-wise. That means, in my opinion, you should try and stick around until you can buy significant items. Like, if you ever go B and leave the base with over 300 gold, in my opinion, you went B at a time that was not opportune for you. You generally want to go B and have less than 200 gold, and then spend said 200 gold on wards or potions. That's the way I like to do it, because time at base, is time not in the field. And the less time you spend in the field, the less gold you're going to get in general. So what you want to do is you want to go back. This is why you see Brandon Luke and I stacking Doran's items so much in the early game. Because it's when you go back, whenever you get the opportunity to go back, you can come back and you have gold efficient stuff to keep your actual gold production up. While they don't scale into anything, you can sell them later on, and by taking those Doran's items, it improves your gold income in the early game. And the trade-off between selling them, the amount of money you lose and having bought them and sell them, compared to how much it helps your farm and how much it helps you lane effectively, is definitely worth it. And that is the virtue behind getting multiple Doran's items on AP carries and AD carries, because they tend to have weaker early games. Tarek's here in the jungle because at this point he's trolling. I get a quick kill here, but I mean, it's not really anything special. The enemy team is given up, and really they're just kind of dicking around until 20 minutes. I wanted to take that red as my next objective, but Yorick took it. I'm not really upset that he took it, but, you know, whatever. So, checking around for objectives, now that I don't really have one, I decide, really the only thing I can do at this point is maybe participate in the push going on in the middle with Anivia, because there's a pretty decent sized creep wave. But Talon's there to stop it. He's only level 6, we could try and dive him, but I really don't give a shit at this point. He goes after Anivia, takes some damage. I decide that bot is where I want to push because the enemy is now focused mid with Anivia's. The icon there was up for blue, but it's gone already, so I decided to just swing by and kill the last creep. We have 4 of our members in a nice creep wave bottom, so we're going to clear out this wave and take the tower pretty easily. When you get to this mid-game stage, obviously, the mid-game is generally going to happen later than 20 minutes, but the mid-game was so accelerated by our team's dominance in the early game that it happened at this point. Usually after the time that the first tower goes down is when calling Mias and stuff becomes largely irrelevant. You should expect it. You really need to be careful after the first tower comes down. That doesn't necessarily imply the mid-game. In my opinion, the mid-game is when this stuff is going on, where you get like large team pushes to towers. This is the mid to late game. The mid-game, so to speak, is generally where you're going to see AD carries farming empty lanes, which I will get into detail about in my AD carry guide. You will see a lot more people just trying to do like tiny split pushes and empty lanes to try and take out opposite towers, and you'll see a lot more invasion to the enemy jungle, and you'll see a lot more ganking. You will see just people like, generally you'll have one team that decides it wants to stay in its lanes and try to farm, and the other one tries to play really aggressive. And it's this, generally the team that tries to play really aggressive is the team that fell behind. They need to make up the fact that they lost. They were the ones to lose the tower. They were the ones to lose the farm war in their lanes. And they need to make up for that deficit by ganking and getting kills to catch up to the enemy team. And it's around this phase where things get a little hairy. This is where the bulk of the farm is done, to be honest, just in empty lanes and stuff. But this action here is the mid and possibly even the late game. The late game really, the late game boils down to dancing around Baron and just one on the team getting Baron and then pushing. So they GG at 20, and it's really to be expected because they got their shit slapped so hard in every which way. So what do we have to take away from that in terms of how we can apply this to our jungler? Obviously, the biggest thing is that there's always something to do. The idea that there's nothing to do as a jungler is crap. Because I've heard a lot of newer junglers just say, well, what do I do if I can't gank any of the lanes? There is always an objective to take, regardless of how minor it is. Even if you go in to check the enemy jungle just to see, okay, is their buff up? Yes, okay, well I can try and take it. Is their buff up? No, that means they have it. That means they're going to be going at it again soon. That's probably where they're going to be if I see them gone for a long time. If you have the value, you can lay down wards in the enemy's jungle. You can lay down a ward at the enemy's red buff, and then go for said red buff when you see that that's where the enemy has decided to go. There is always something to do. In terms of priority, really, the only way, in my opinion, that ganking a lane takes priority over securing your own red and blue buffs in your jungle is if the lane is getting fucked up hard. And really, that is a detriment caused by poor lane play by your lane mate that they got into that situation. 9 times out of 10. There are exceptions, like 2v1 lanes, but really, I don't think 2v1 lanes are going to apply to you guys in this tournament, so I'm not going to go into detail about them pretty much ever, because they're largely irrelevant to what you guys need to know in the grand scheme of things. Competitively, you don't need to worry about how to do a 2v1 lane. Counter jungling is a really tricky thing to do, there's no doubt about it. Getting the feeling for it and getting the timings is very tricky. And it is only really good with certain characters. Udyr, Lee Sin, fast junglers can counter jungle well. But counter jungling is a very powerful tool to use. Gank before level 4. As you can see, I ganked multiple times, did I? No, I ganked once at level 2. And by virtue of that gank, that gave a lot of advantage top. But if you're not going to gank by level 4, and I really think that it is okay if you don't do it for some champions, but if you're not going to gank by level 4, you have to put pressure on the enemy jungler. You have to invade, and you have to start taking their buffs. You can't sit and farm in the jungle as though it's a lane. It doesn't work that way. The jungle is a completely different game mindset than the rest of League of Legends, wherein you are focused on objectives throughout the entire game. Your objectives are not to farm. Your objectives are to farm to an extent. Your objectives are to not fall behind in farms so badly that you become a detriment to your team in terms of farm. But your objectives are dragon, the buffs in your jungle, putting pressure on the enemy jungler, and helping your lane mates. The jungle is a lane in a way. You are competing against the enemy jungler. It is very much a competition between the two of them. And it is only when you start to look at it that way and you actually start to play against the enemy jungler and not with your teammates that you'll find yourself coming out of the early game in a better position. And that's about all I have to say. If you have any more questions, you can leave them on the Blake Pro League Facebook group or leave them in the comments on the YouTube video. Thank you. Have a good day.